Have you ever reached a point where you just couldn't keep doing it anymore? Not out of anger, not even out of sadness, but because something inside you finally whispered, "That's enough." Choosing yourself doesn't always start with a big moment. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's you sitting alone, realizing you've spent your whole life putting others first, and there's nothing left for you. Carl Jung called that the beginning of individuation, but most people just call it selfish. In this video, we're going to talk about what actually happens when you finally choose yourself, and why it feels so confusing, so heavy, and so freeing all at once. Most people will tell you that choosing yourself is empowering, that it means you've finally figured it out, that now you're strong, confident, untouchable. But the truth is, it doesn't feel like that at first. In fact, it often feels like you've broken something. You stop showing up in the same way for people. You stop agreeing just to keep the peace. You start saying no when you're tired. You stop explaining yourself all the time. And slowly, things begin to shift. Some people pull away, others get cold. Some stay. But now there's tension, and you're left wondering, did I do something wrong? Carl Jung believed that the moment you start choosing yourself, your unconscious begins to reorganize your entire identity. He called it individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, not who you were trained to be. But that shift, it's not clean, it's messy, it's lonely, and it brings up parts of you that you've buried under years of pleasing, performing, and pretending to be fine. If this is where you are right now, I want you to stay with me. Let this video play, even if you're doing other things. Your conscious mind might drift, but your deeper self will hear what it needs to, because what you're going through isn't failure, it's transformation. And you're not crazy for feeling like everything is changing. Let's talk about what actually happens when you finally choose yourself. 1. People start to pull away. At first, nothing happens. You make a choice that feels small. Maybe you say no to something you usually say yes to. Maybe you stop replying right away. Maybe you cancel plans because you're too tired to pretend you're okay. And then, you notice the shift. Someone close to you seems colder than usual. They don't ask if you're okay. They just say, "You've changed." Maybe they stop calling as much. Maybe they pull away completely. And for a moment, you wonder, is it me? Did I mess this up? What's actually happening is this. People were used to a version of you that made their life easier, a version that always said yes. That showed up even when you were exhausted. That didn't set boundaries because you were too afraid of being seen as difficult. That version of you was predictable, comfortable, easy to access. But when you start choosing yourself, even in small ways, people who benefited from your self-abandonment start to notice. And not everyone can handle it. Some will distance themselves. Some will try to guilt you back into your old habits. Others might pretend everything's fine, but you can feel the difference. And the hardest part? It hurts. Even if you knew those relationships were one-sided, it still hurts to be left. It hurts to feel misunderstood. It hurts to be called selfish when all you did was listen to yourself for once. But this part is necessary, because choosing yourself doesn't just mean changing how you treat you. It means accepting that not everyone will like the new version of you. And that's not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're finally becoming real. Some people will fall away. Let them. Others will adjust. A few might meet you at this new level, and in time, the space that opens up will make room for people who don't want the version of you that breaks herself to be loved, but the one who finally stopped doing that. 2. You start to feel alone and unsure. Once the noise dies down, you're left with something that catches you off guard. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes you wonder if you've done something terribly wrong. You're not getting as many messages. No one's checking in like before. You stop getting asked for favors, for advice, for emotional support. And even though that's what you wanted, it still feels like rejection, like absence, like being invisible. And in that space, something else creeps in. Doubt. You start second-guessing the choice to choose yourself. Maybe you were being too cold. Maybe you're being selfish. Maybe you ruined relationships that mattered. That voice in your head, the one that used to keep you in place, gets louder in the quiet. But here's the truth. This loneliness isn't failure. It's detox. For years, maybe even decades, your identity was tied to being needed, being available, being likable. Now that you've stepped away from that, there's a void. Not because you've lost something bad, but because your nervous system doesn't recognize this kind of stillness yet. It feels foreign, unsafe, too quiet. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is that moment. The discomfort you're feeling is your unconscious patterns rising to the surface, finally being seen. You're not just alone in this phase, you're exposed. All the emotions you numbed through busyness or validation seeking begin to surface. The grief, the guilt, the anger, the emptiness. And for a while, it feels like maybe you were better off before. But this stage matters more than most people realize, because you can't hear your real voice when everyone else's is louder. You can't know what you truly want until you stop letting others decide for you. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something starts to shift. You begin recognizing what your emotions are trying to tell you. You start feeling when your yes is real and when it's just fear. You catch yourself before you apologize for having needs. This is the part where self-trust is built. Not from success, not from certainty, but from staying with yourself even when everything in you wants to go back to the familiar, even when no one claps for your boundaries, even when it's just you, and from this quiet, your real voice begins to emerge. But that's the next chapter. 3. You start hearing your real voice. Once the outside noise fades, something unexpected begins to happen. Your own voice, the one that had been buried under years of pleasing, performing, and peacekeeping, starts to speak up. But it doesn't sound the way you imagined. It's not loud, it's not confident, it's hesitant, shaky, even a little awkward at first. Because for so long, you weren't allowed to listen to it. You were too busy listening to what others needed, what they expected, how they'd feel, what they'd think. At first, it's disorienting. You find yourself asking simple questions and struggling to answer them. What do I actually want? Do I like this, or have I just convinced myself I do? Am I tired? Or just disconnected? Carl Jung wrote that the psyche will do anything to avoid facing itself. And now, for the first time, there's nothing standing between you and yourself. So your voice comes forward, not in perfect wisdom, but in small, quiet truths. You might hear it when you walk into a room and immediately feel tension, and instead of brushing it off, something in you says, "I don't want to be here." You might feel it when you're about to say yes to something you've always said yes to, and suddenly your body says no, even if your mouth hesitates to follow. And slowly, you begin to trust it. It's uncomfortable, because this voice often tells the truth you've spent years avoiding. It calls out the friendships that are rooted in guilt. It notices the subtle manipulations in your relationships. It reminds you that the job you're in is draining your soul, and that the version of you you've been selling to the world isn't you anymore. But this voice also does something else. It starts guiding you back to yourself. It nudges you toward spaces that feel light, toward people who listen when you speak and don't just wait to respond, toward routines that nourish you, toward rest, honesty, clarity. It will often contradict your habits. It will conflict with what people around you expect. But every time you listen to it, even a little, you feel something anchor inside you. And here's what's even more important. That voice doesn't just tell you what to walk away from. It also reminds you of what you once loved. The art you gave up. The places you long to visit. The version of you that used to laugh without calculating the room. This voice isn't a new part of you. It's the part you silenced to survive. Now, you're letting it speak again. And once you hear it, really hear it, something shifts. You can't pretend anymore. You can't unknow what you now know. And that's where the real grief begins. 4. You realize how much of your life was self-abandonment. This part isn't talked about enough. After you start listening to your real voice, not the people-pleaser, not the over-explainer, not the fixer, you look back on your life, and it hits you. You start to see how many times you stayed silent when you wanted to scream. How often you said yes when everything in your body said no. How long you kept showing up for people who never once asked if you were okay. And it's heartbreaking. Because while the world may have praised you for being so strong, so reliable, or so kind, you begin to realize they weren't praising your wholeness. They were praising your self-abandonment. Carl Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And in this phase, you begin to see just how often you rejected your own truth, not because you didn't have it, but because you were afraid to lose love if you lived it. This is where the grief comes in. Not just over lost time, but over who you could have been if you had chosen yourself sooner. You start remembering moments that didn't seem like much at the time, laughing at jokes that hurt you, agreeing to things that drained you, comforting people who were actively hurting you. And now you see them clearly, and it hurts. You might feel angry with yourself. You might feel ashamed. You might want to push it all away and pretend it never happened. But this grief is not here to punish you. It's here to free you. Because you can't reclaim yourself without first grieving the parts of you you had to hide. You can't stand fully in your truth without mourning the years you spent disconnecting from it. And once you allow that grief to move through you, really move through, something cracks open. Compassion for who you were, for why you did what you did, for the fact that sometimes we betray ourselves just to survive. And now you don't have to do that anymore, because awareness doesn't always feel like power at first. Sometimes it feels like pain, but that pain is honest, and honest pain will always set you free. 5. You begin to feel powerful, quietly. You won't even notice it at first. There's no big moment, no dramatic shift. But one day you'll respond differently in a conversation that used to shake you. You'll say no to something without guilt. You'll rest without needing to justify it. And you'll realize you're changing. The chaos that used to live under your skin begins to settle. The constant need to monitor how others feel about you fades. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. This is quiet power. Not the kind that needs to be seen or praised. The kind that lives in your nervous system, in the way you breathe, in the way you carry yourself. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this is that becoming. You start to feel solid, not invincible, not perfect, but grounded. You know what's yours and what isn't. You don't react to every emotion or every opinion. You give yourself space. You don't need people to agree with you to feel valid. And what's even more surprising? You begin to feel peace where there used to be pressure. Peace in saying no. Peace in not attending. Peace in not performing. Peace in being exactly who you are, even when no one is watching. This power isn't about control. It's about clarity. You're no longer trying to be everything to everyone. You're no longer contorting to keep the peace. You're no longer shrinking to be accepted. You're just you. And that, in itself, is powerful. But don't stop here. Because once you begin to embody this new self, the way the world responds to you also begins to shift. And not everyone will be okay with it. Let's talk about that next. 6. You trigger people. Without saying a word. You're not louder now. You're not dramatic. You don't argue. You don't chase. But somehow your presence starts to feel different to others. And not everyone takes it well. Some people will begin to act strange around you. Shorter conversations, subtle jabs, distance that wasn't there before. And you didn't do anything to provoke it. You just stopped over-giving, over-explaining, and overcompensating. That's the trigger. Carl Jung believed that when someone becomes more whole, they unconsciously confront others with the parts of themselves they've avoided. And that's exactly what happens here. You, standing in your truth, naturally reflect the parts of others they haven't dealt with. People who are used to control will feel unsettled by your boundaries. People who relied on your silence will feel irritated when you speak clearly. People who were used to your guilt will be confused by your calm. You didn't change to upset them. You changed to save yourself. But growth, even silent growth, creates friction. And not everyone is ready to meet you where you're headed. It's hard not to take it personally, especially if it's someone close, a sibling, a longtime friend, a partner. Their reactions can feel cold, even cruel. You might hear things like, "You think you're better now," or "You've become distant." And part of you will want to prove that you're still kind, still loyal, still loving. But don't fall back into your old role just to keep their comfort intact. You don't owe anyone a version of you that betrays your peace. Let people be uncomfortable. Let them misunderstand you. Let them adjust or walk away. Not because you're being cold, but because you're not responsible for managing their reaction to your healing. There will be people who see your new boundaries as rejection. People who take your self-trust as arrogance. People who want the old you back, not because it was better for you, but because it was easier for them. But stay steady. The people who belong in your next chapter won't feel threatened by your growth. They'll respect it, and they'll grow too. 7. You become someone you never thought you could be. One day, and it won't be loud, you'll realize you've changed. Not in a dramatic, overnight way, but in a quiet, grounded way. You'll notice that you don't feel the same anxiety when someone doesn't approve of you. You won't overthink every text you send. You'll leave a conversation without wondering if you said too much or too little. You'll rest without guilt. You'll speak without shrinking. You'll walk differently. Decide differently. Exist differently. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The parts of you that felt too intense, too sensitive, too quiet, too much, they don't feel like flaws anymore. They feel like truth. You begin to see that the things you tried to hide are actually the things that make you whole. You're not obsessed with being liked anymore. You don't chase love. You don't beg for validation. You've learned how to sit with discomfort, how to say no without guilt, how to choose yourself without apology. You've gone through the fire, not to become untouchable, but to become honest, present, free. And the best part? You're not afraid of losing people anymore, because you know now that the only real loss is abandoning yourself to be accepted. This version of you is quiet but clear, soft but strong, alone at times, but never lost. You don't just feel better, you feel real. And that is something no one can take from you. Most people will never understand what it takes to finally choose yourself. It's not a trend. It's not a slogan. It's a decision you make over and over, in silence, in discomfort, in moments when no one is watching. If this video made you feel seen, subscribe, not for me, but for you. Because if you're on this path, you shouldn't walk it alone. And if any part of this resonated with where you are right now, leave a comment. Even just a sentence. Sometimes speaking your truth out loud is the next step in honoring it. You're not broken, you're not selfish, you're just finally listening to the voice that's been waiting for you all along. Keep going. You're becoming,